Tuesday marks the second anniversary of a historic agreement between world leaders in Paris to collectively fight climate change. 2 years on, they're back in the French capital to drum up support for clean energy and environmentally friendly initiatives. Prominent businessmen like Bill Gates, Richard Branson and Michael Bloomberg are there, but missing is US President Donald Trump, who's pulled the world's largest economy out of the Paris Agreement. French President Emmanuel Macron says Trump's exit has not dampened spirits.
After this decision, we accelerated the ratification. We had more and more countries joining the club and ratifying the Paris Agreement. It was a sort of big shock for a lot of people saying, wow, if the very first country decides to leave the club, now it's at risk.
And the former governor of California says America will play its part in reducing emissions.
That it doesn't matter that Donald Trump backed out of the Paris Agreement, because the private sector didn't drop out, the public sector didn't drop out, the universities didn't drop out, scientists didn't drop out, engineers didn't drop out, no one dropped out.
Policymakers from at least 50 countries are here, and they're hoping to move beyond rhetoric to action. They are expected to raise money to fund clean energy projects in poorer countries. An agreement is expected to compel development banks to stop lending for new coal power plants, and they're likely to push companies to disclose investments in fossil fuels, which may lose value as governments clamp down on emissions. But the biggest challenge is raising funds for these initiatives, and experts say that's the ultimate measure of the success of this summit.
We know that we're really far from what is needed in terms of climate finance, and so we need leaders, and especially Emmanuel Macron.
Despite the optimism on display here, achieving the lofty goals of the Paris Agreement will be even harder without the world's second biggest polluter. And while Macron and others have criticized Trump, they're still hopeful he will, in the future, rejoin efforts to fight environmental change.
Make our planet great again.
Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
So let's go to Paris now, and joining me from there is our editor-at-large, Craig Peters. Welcome, Craig. Look, what's the mood like at that summit? Is there an air of optimism that there was 2 years ago?
Well, I think the delegate from Fiji said it best. He said the whole world is in the same canoe. The only one who isn't in that canoe is Donald Trump. The takeaway here is business as usual is over, whether America likes it or not. The question is, can they find the financing to pay the developing nations into cutting back on their polluting ways?
So from everything that we're hearing, Emmanuel Macron is basically saying that the withdrawal of the US from the Paris Agreement is creating a void and a momentum amongst everyone else to fill that void. Is he being overly optimistic when he says that?
Yes. No, I don't believe so. I mean, you know, Donald Trump has done a great thing. He's brought the world together. Unfortunately, Trump is not part of that togetherness. You're really seeing that here, and you're seeing Macron take a true leadership role in what is clearly the most pressing issue of the modern day, which is global pollution. Everyone has signed on to this, including Syria, everyone except the United States. Although Schwarzenegger says that universities and businesses and Americans are signing on to this, whether they can come up with the money required for this is going to hinge on whether the United States government gives tax incentives to U.S. companies. And that seems very iffy right now.
Yeah, it does, especially with this tax bill going through Congress at the moment. But look, the object of this particular summit is several-fold. One is to help poor countries adopt clean energy, stopping development banks lending for new coal-fired plants, and insisting that companies disclose their fossil fuel assets. How far along are they in achieving these goals as of now?
Well, we covered the COP21 2 years ago, and I'll tell you this, Azar, they're much further along than anyone expected. Very briefly, in 2016, 22% reduction in fossil fuel investment by global banks. Bill Gates pulled out of all funding from British Petroleum. Pension funds are divesting from many oil companies. J.P. Morgan stopped funding coal projects in developing countries. Paribas has pulled out of investing in shale gas firms. The list goes on and on and on and on. People are on board with this because what's at stake is really the future of the planet. When you think about it, 2 to 3 million people die every year from air pollution, is what we're being told. And those figures only look to increase unless we can cut back on this pollution. And the only way to do that is to wean the world off the oil and gas and emissions economy. It's going to be very long, it's going to be very hard, and it's going to be very expensive.
Right, but Craig, no company is going to get on board with all of those well-meaning but altruistic ideals. So what incentives are governments giving to companies to get on board?
Well, right now, governments are essentially giving tax breaks, but it's also a matter of luring the right people. And this is where it comes to France. Macron is trying to lure the brightest minds here to get this track started. But he has a problem because according to the latest World Economic Forum surveys, France is number 61 on the capacity to attract talent to this country. Switzerland, the UAE, the UK, and the USA are up top. Why? Because they pay more money and that's where the talent goes.
Craig Copetas in Paris, thank you ever so much.